Big backyard, a granny flat, a garage or a pool. Well, a leading property site has released a list of its most searched keywords and the results may surprise you. So here to tell us more is Ben Kingsley, the chair of the Property Investment Professionals of Australia. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Jane. How are you?
I am well. So what is the number one thing Aussies are searching for in a home?
Well, Jane, we've got to put this into context. Basically, we normally search by area first and then we choose the type of property that we want to buy and then the number of bedrooms and maybe car spots. But what we're then, down the bottom of these search filters is an area where we can actually put a selection in and we can actually type a keyword into that. And this is what we've found out. It's very clear that people love pools. Right across the nation, basically pools represent 44% of those search queries going into that particular filter. It's then waterfront, and wouldn't we all love a waterfront property? And then it goes on to views, so we love our aspect. And then what's interesting is granny flat, so that's a new one.
All right, so you're obviously going to have to pay for all of these features, but why do you think pools are such a popular search?
I think it's really coming of age in terms of, for the last sort of 10 years, we've really changed the way in which we look at property. And we've now got this sort of al fresco indoor-outdoor feel about how we want our home to be. And I think this is a natural extension of that. And we've also got to understand with growing population, we all can't live close to the beach and some of our public pools are getting busier and busier. So what we're tend to seeing is maybe these people are looking to put a pool in their backyard to have that complete experience of that indoor-outdoor, sort of private experience to entertain.
We're looking at some very beautiful backyard pools there. Now, you mentioned granny flats have started to become a bigger draw card. Is this a new thing?
I think it's a little bit of a trend. I saw what we've seen in basically areas like New South Wales, Queensland and Western Australia is the planning guidelines around putting a granny flat in have been relaxed. So we are definitely seeing a spike in the number of granny flat applications going into those particular areas. And if I put my investor hat on, I think it's got to do with the dual income story. So we definitely know investors are looking at trying to get double income. So they get the income from the house and they can also get the income from the property. So I think this is a double income play, and I think there's more investors who are using that search functionality on these residential portals to try and get that opportunity where they can fast track to see whether there is a granny flat with this particular property or not, and it just increases the speed in which they can search for property investments.
There might be a few people looking into that Airbnb market too.
Exactly.
Now, Australia is a big country. State by state, are people looking for the same thing, or do we have a bit of variation depending on where you live?
Yeah, there is a little bit of variation. Obviously, pools are definitely the biggest, but then we get down into, so we have a look at New South Wales. We know that waterfront is then very high up, and then we start to see these granny flats and these duplexes. So I think that's the investors who are again doing their search results, and then we all love the views or a view. It's interesting that we get views and views, so I don't know whether people want a view out the front and out the back of their property, or whether it's just, people are putting it in different ways and different interpretations. So that's an interesting one. If we get into Queensland, we also know, again, water is very important. And then we've got the granny flats and the duplexes and the dual living. So I think that's investors basically trying to get down to that fine tuning of finding that right property. And we start to see an introduction of sheds. South Australia, it's an interesting story there. The corner allotment is interesting because that's about more land. It's also potentially about the developer or the investor trying to, subdivide that land as well. So the granny flats are in there as a story as well. And then for Victoria, what we're seeing is the warehouse and the courtyard. So inner city living around the sort of inner fringes of Collingwood, North Fitzroy, those types of areas, it's been a big part of that. And the courtyard is also about that privacy. So if we sort of take a full look around Australia, what we're basically seeing in Western Australia, we've got the sheds and also the workshops. So I think there's a little bit of tinkering going on, the boys with their toys. Those are the types of things that we're looking for around the nation.
It might be hard to tell this just from the search, but in your experience, do you think there's a difference between what people are looking for when they want to live in the home compared to what investors might be searching for?
Yeah, Jane, there is. And look, a good investor should always look for owner-occupier appeal because the owner-occupier buys with their heart. And that normally sees the capital growth story, the value of the property going higher. The investors who chase income are effectively looking for cash flow coming from their properties. But if you get the great investor will follow that owner-occupier appeal. So, if they're looking for pools, that's got to be a consideration. There are risks around the pool in terms of extra maintenance costs, but overall, you're looking for streetscape, you're looking for that aspect, and very much so closer to water. And obviously, waterfront is going to be a real winner when it comes to scarcity value to get the best returns for the investor as well.
Well, it is Saturday, so there's auctions around the country. We could probably talk about real estate all day, but we won't. Ben Kingsley, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Jane.
Natalia?